Poor boy finds an old car covered in brush. But what was inside changes his life. Tyler was walking through the dense woods looking for dry branches when he heard the sound of metal hitting stone. The 12-year-old boy stopped and looked around, trying to figure out where that strange sound was coming from. His mother, Rebecca, had asked him to fetch firewood for the wood stove, as the gas had run out the week before, and they had no money to buy another tank. That's when Tyler tripped over something hard buried in the ground. As he got up and cleared away the dry leaves, his eyes widened. Before him was the unmistakable shape of a rusty bumper, almost completely covered in green moss and tangled vines. "Good heavens," whispered the boy, pushing aside more branches and leaves. Little by little he revealed what appeared to be an old car, completely swallowed by the forest vegetation. The vehicle had been there so long that small trees had grown around it, their roots embracing the metal as if it were part of nature. Tyler felt his heart race. He had never seen anything like it in those woods where he had played since he was little. How had a car ended up there in the middle of nowhere, far from any road? The boy walked around the vehicle, trying to find a way to open one of the doors. Rust had sealed some of them shut, but the driver's door gave way with a loud creak when he pulled hard. The smell of mold and dampness filled his nostrils. The interior was full of dry leaves, small twigs and spiderwebs. The seats, which must have once been brown leather, were completely deteriorated. Tyler was about to leave when something caught his attention under the back seat. There was a strange bulge, as if something were hidden underneath. He stretched and managed to pull out a small metal box, about the size of a shoebox. It was heavy and had a small rusty lock that gave way easily when he forced it with a stone. Inside the box, protected by yellowed plastic, were old papers, some black and white photographs, and what looked like official documents with faded stamps. "What is all this?" murmured Tyler, carefully leafing through the papers. He couldn't understand most of the words, but he recognized some names. One of them made his heart stop. Mary Grace Thompson Wilson. It was his grandmother's name, his mother's mother, who had passed away when Rebecca was still a child. Tyler gathered everything back into the box and ran home, completely forgetting about the firewood he was supposed to collect. Rebecca was sitting on the porch of their small wooden house mending an old shirt when she saw her son running up with a strange box in his hands. "Son, what's all this rush? And where's the firewood I asked for?" "Mum, you need to see this," said Tyler, breathless. "I found something really strange in the woods." Rebecca furrowed her brow and set her sewing on her lap. At 35, she had learned to be wary of anything that seemed too good to be true. Life had taught her that hopes often brought only disappointment. "What box is this, Tyler? Where did you find it?" The boy told her about the car covered in brush and showed his mother the contents of the box. Rebecca took one of the papers with trembling hands. "This here." She began to speak, but her voice failed. "What is it, Mom?" "This is my mother's name, Mary Grace Thompson Wilson." Rebecca examined the documents more closely, and tears began to stream down her face. "Tyler, this is her handwriting. I recognize this signature." "But what does all this mean, Mum?" Rebecca shook her head, still in shock. Her mother had passed away when she was only 8 years old, leaving only vague memories and a pain that had never fully healed. "I don't know, my son." "I don't know." That night, after Tyler went to sleep, Rebecca stayed up studying the documents by candlelight. There were several photographs of a woman she recognized as her mother, but in some of them, Mary Grace was in front of a small building that Rebecca didn't recognize. One of the photographs showed a plot of land with some machinery and what looked like the start of a construction. On the back, written in her mother's handwriting, was, "Our factory, 1983. Rebecca felt a chill. Her mother had never mentioned owning a factory. In fact, she remembered Mary Grace as a simple woman who worked in the fields and sold pastries at the town market. Among the documents was a deed she couldn't fully understand, but one thing was clear. It was registered that Mary Grace was the owner of a 5-hectare plot of land in the area where the region's largest company, Thompson & Sons Industries, now operated. Thompson & Sons Industries was owned by the town's wealthiest family, the Matthews. They employed over 200 people and were respected by everyone in the community. Rebecca had tried to get a job there several times but had never been called. The next morning, Rebecca took Tyler to the municipal library. The librarian, Mrs. Evelyn, was a 68-year-old lady who knew the entire history of the town. "Mrs. Rebecca, what a joy to see you here," said Mrs. Evelyn with a smile. "And this handsome young man must be Tyler, right?" "Yes, Mrs. Evelyn. You who know everyone in this town. Do you remember my mother, Mary Grace?" Mrs. Evelyn's smile faded, and she motioned for them to come closer. "Of course I remember, my dear. How could I forget?" she said in a low voice. "Your mother was a very hard-working woman. She had a small business that was growing well." "What business, Mrs. Evelyn?" "A small canning factory. She made the best preserves in the region. She had even started selling to neighboring towns." Evelyn looked around to make sure no one was listening. "But then that strange thing happened." "What thing?" "Your mother disappeared overnight. One day she was here. The next, she was gone. She left you as a little girl with your aunt and was never heard from again." Rebecca felt her chest tighten. She had grown up believing her mother had abandoned the family because she couldn't handle the responsibilities. "But Mrs. Evelyn, my mother didn't own any factory. She worked in the fields." The librarian shook her head. "No, my dear. Your mother did have a small factory. It is, or was, on the site where that big industry, Thompson and Sons, is today." She paused and looked at Rebecca with a worried expression. "Why are you asking about this after so long?" Tyler showed the photographs to Mrs. Evelyn, who examined them carefully. "Good heavens," she whispered. "This is indeed your mother, Rebecca. And this building, it's exactly where the industry is today." "Mrs. Evelyn, do you think something might have happened to my mother?" The librarian was silent for a long moment. "My dear, your mother always said someone wanted to take her land. She used to come here to the library to research laws about how to protect her property. She said there were important people trying to trick her. And do you believe that could have happened?" "Rebecca, back then a lot of strange things happened. Simple people lost their land to people with more power and money. Your mother was an intelligent woman, but she was also naive about some things." Mrs. Evelyn went to an old file and brought out some yellowed newspapers. "Look here. This news came out right after your mother disappeared. The headline said, 'New industry will bring progress to the city.' The article talked about the Matthews family who had acquired land to build a modern factory." "Look at the date," said Mrs. Evelyn, pointing at the newspaper. 3 months after your mother vanished." Rebecca felt the world spinning around her. Could her mother have been the victim of some kind of scam? Were the documents that Tyler had found proof of an injustice that had never come to light? "Mrs. Evelyn, do you think I should approach the Matthews family to clarify this?" "Rebecca, be very careful. That family has a lot of power in this town. If there really was any wrongdoing, they will do everything to protect their interests." Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to leave a like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now, continuing. On the way back home, Rebecca and Tyler walked in silence, each lost in their own thoughts. The boy watched his mother's worried face and felt he had unleashed something much bigger than he imagined when he found that box. "Mom, do you think Grandma was cheated?" Rebecca stopped walking and crouched in front of her son. "Tyler, I don't know what happened to your grandmother, but one thing I know. If she was the victim of an injustice, we will find out the truth. And if we find out she was cheated, what will we do? We will fight for her rights, for the rights that should be ours." That afternoon, Rebecca decided it was time to face her fears. She dressed in her best clothes, which was a simple but clean dress, and went to Thompson and Sons Industries with Tyler. The company was on a huge plot of land, surrounded by high walls. At the main gate there was a security guard who looked at them suspiciously as they approached. "What do you want here?" the man asked harshly. "We want to speak with the owner of the company, Mr. Matthews," said Rebecca, trying to keep her voice steady. "Mr. Matthews doesn't see just anyone. You need an appointment. And look, by the looks of you, I think you'd better not even try." Tyler felt his blood boil at how the man treated his mother, but Rebecca placed a hand on his shoulder, asking for calm. "Please, tell him it's about Mary Grace Thompson Wilson. It's very important." The security guard laughed disdainfully. "Never heard that name. Get out of here before I call my supervisor." They were about to leave when an elegant woman, about 40 years old, got out of an imported car that had just parked. She wore expensive clothes and jewelry that sparkled in the sun. "What's going on here, Ronald?" she asked the guard. "Nothing much, Mrs. Victoria. Just some people trying to bother Mr. Matthews." The woman looked Rebecca and Tyler up and down, clearly assessing their simple clothes and humble appearance. "And what do you want with my father?" asked Victoria Matthews, daughter of the company's owner. Rebecca took a deep breath and decided to be direct. "My name is Rebecca, and this is my son, Tyler. We want to talk about my mother, Mary Grace Thompson Wilson." "I've never heard that name," Victoria replied curtly. "She was the owner of the land where your company now stands." Victoria laughed loudly, a laugh with no joy in it. "That's absurd. My family bought that land decades ago, all legal, all documented. Are you trying to take advantage of our good financial situation?" "No, ma'am. We have documents that prove my mother was the true owner of this land." "Documents? What documents? Did you forge something to try to trick us?" Tyler stepped forward, holding the metal box. "We didn't forge anything. I found this in the woods, inside an old car." Victoria looked at the box with a strange expression, as if she had recognized something. But she soon recomposed her arrogant demeanor. "Any paper can be forged. Do you think we're naive?" She turned to the security guard. "Ronald, if they come back here, call the authorities. They're trying to pull a scam." "Wait a minute," said Rebecca, feeling her indignation grow. "We are not con artists. We just want to discover the truth about what happened to my mother. The truth is, you're trying to take advantage of our family." "This won't work," replied Victoria, getting into the car. "Ronald, I don't want to see these people here again." On the way back home, Rebecca was visibly shaken. Tyler walked beside her, also in silence, processing the humiliation they had just suffered. "Mum, why was she so rude to us?" "Because people with money sometimes think they can treat others however they want, my son." "But did you see how she looked at the box? It seemed like she knew something." Rebecca nodded. She had also noticed Victoria's reaction when Tyler showed the metal box. That night Rebecca could barely sleep. She kept turning over in her head everything Mrs. Evelyn had told her, the documents Tyler had found, and especially the strange reaction of Victoria Matthews. Around 2 in the morning, she heard strange noises from outside the house. She got up silently and went to the window. There were 2 figures moving in the backyard, near the spot where she had hidden the box with the documents. Rebecca felt her heart race. Someone was trying to break into her house. She quietly woke Tyler, and the 2 hid in the bedroom, listening to the noises coming from the living room. The intruders seemed to be looking for something specific. They ransacked the entire house, but apparently didn't find what they were looking for. After about half an hour, the noises stopped. Rebecca and Tyler waited until they were sure they were alone before leaving their hiding place. The house was completely turned upside down. Drawers open, cushions thrown on the floor, even the mattress had been pulled off the bed. "Mom, they were looking for the box," whispered Tyler. "Yes, my son. And that means someone knows we have those documents." Rebecca went to the backyard, where she had hidden the box under a pile of firewood. To her despair, the box was gone. "They took everything, Tyler. They took all the evidence." The boy looked at his mother with a determined expression. "No, Mom. They didn't take everything." "What do you mean?" Tyler ran inside the house and came back with an old cell phone he had borrowed from the neighbor, Mr. Anthony. "I photographed all the documents yesterday, before showing them to you. I was afraid something might happen to them." Rebecca hugged her son, feeling a mix of pride and hope. "My clever boy. You saved our only chance to discover the truth." The next morning, they went back to the woods to check the car where Tyler had found the box. What they found was devastating. The vehicle had been completely burned. Only twisted pieces of metal and ashes scattered on the forest floor remained. "They burned it to destroy any evidence," said Rebecca, looking at the wreckage. "But why, Mum? If they didn't do anything wrong, why so much worry?" "Because they have something to hide, Tyler. Something very big." In town, the news spread quickly. Mrs. Evelyn, who had been worried after their conversation the previous day, looked for Rebecca at home. "My dear, I heard your house was robbed last night." Is this about the documents you showed me? Yes, Mrs. Evelyn, and they also burned the car in the woods. The librarian shook her head with concern. Rebecca, this is getting dangerous. You've stirred up something very serious. I know, but I can't give up now. My mother may have been the victim of a great injustice, and I need to discover the truth. And how will you do that without the original documents? Tyler showed his phone to Mrs. Evelyn. I photographed everything, Mrs. Evelyn. All the pages, all the photos. The librarian smiled at the boy. What a smart boy, but you'll need professional help to analyze these documents. I'll refer you to someone. Mrs. Evelyn took them to the office of attorney Daniel Harper, a young 32-year-old lawyer who had grown up in the town itself. Daniel was the son of a mechanic and had managed to graduate from law school by working during the day and studying at night. Mr. Harper, this is Rebecca and Tyler. They need help with a very delicate matter. Daniel received mother and son in his small office, decorated simply but warmly. He listened attentively to the whole story, from the discovery of the car to the break-in at the house. Rebecca, this situation is indeed very serious. If the documents Tyler photographed are authentic, you may be looking at a case of wrongful appropriation of property. Do you think we have a chance of proving anything? First, I need to carefully analyze all the photographs. Then we'll have to do some research at the local registry offices to verify how the property transfer was done. Tyler transferred the photos to the lawyer's computer. Daniel examined each document carefully, taking notes in a notebook. Look here, he said, pointing to one of the photographs. This signature appears to have been made by two different people. See how some letters have a different slant than the others. Does that mean it could have been forged? Asked Rebecca. It's a possibility. I'll need to have a handwriting expert examination to be sure, but there are signs of irregularity. Mr. Harper, do you know the Matthews family? The lawyer paused before answering. Yes, I do. They are very influential in town, but to be honest, there have always been suspicions about how they managed to accumulate so much wealth in such a short time. What kind of suspicions? My father worked at their company for a few years right at the beginning. He always talked about strange things he saw there. Documents that would appear and disappear. Secret meetings, ordinary people who lost their properties inexplicably. Daniel showed Rebecca and Tyler some old maps of the region. Look here. This map is from 1982. Show me where the company is today. Tyler pointed to a specific area on the map. Right. Now let's compare it with this map from 1985, 3 years later. On the more recent map, the same area was marked as belonging to the Matthews family. And here's the problem, Daniel continued. On the 1982 map, this area was registered in the name of Mary Grace Thompson Wilson, your grandmother, Tyler. So she really owned that land? Asked the boy. According to official records, yes, but something happened between 1982 and 1985 that caused the property to be transferred to the Matthews. Rebecca felt a mix of anger and sadness. Mr. Harper, does this mean my mother was truly deceived? I can't state that with certainty yet. I need to investigate further, but the evidence is very strong. During the following days, Daniel worked tirelessly investigating the property records of the region. He discovered that several land transfers to the Matthews family had occurred in the 1980s and 1990s, always involving simple people who later disappeared from the town. Rebecca, I found something very interesting, he said during a meeting in his office. Your mother wasn't the only one. At least 5 more families lost their properties to the Matthews under suspicious circumstances. And where are those families today? That's the strangest part. They all left town right after the property transfers. Some claimed health problems, others simply vanished. Tyler, who was listening to the conversation, asked a question that left the adults silent. What if those people didn't leave of their own will? Daniel and Rebecca exchanged glances, understanding the implications of the boy's question. Tyler, are you suggesting that, Rebecca began, that they may have been forced to leave? Or worse? Daniel shook his head. That would be very serious. We're talking about serious crimes. But is it possible? Insisted Tyler. It's possible, but it would be very hard to prove after so much time. That same day in the afternoon, Victoria Matthews showed up at Rebecca's house. She arrived in her imported car, accompanied by two men in suits who stayed outside the vehicle. "Rebecca, I need to talk to you," said Victoria, displaying a less arrogant posture than the first time. "Go ahead. I heard you hired a lawyer to investigate my family. So what? I want to make you an offer that could solve all your financial problems." Victoria showed a thick envelope. "There's enough money here for you and your son to start a new life somewhere else. Far from here, far from the problems." Rebecca looked at the envelope, but made no move to take it. "Why would you do that?" "Because I want to avoid a headache for everyone. My family employs many people in this town. If you continue with these investigations, you could end up harming innocent families who depend on the jobs we provide. And if I don't accept?" Victoria's expression hardened. "Then things could get more complicated for you. Much more complicated." Tyler, who was listening to the conversation from the window, felt his blood boil. He came out of the house and stood beside his mother. "We don't want your money," said the boy, looking directly into Victoria's eyes. "I wasn't talking to you, kid." "Yes, you were, because my grandmother was tricked by your family, and we're going to prove it." Victoria laughed, but it was a nervous laugh. "Prove it then. Let's see if you can." After she left, Rebecca hugged Tyler. "My son, you were very brave, but now things are going to get harder for us." "I know, Mom, but we can't let them get away with what they did to Grandma." That night, Rebecca could barely sleep. She knew she had crossed a line from which she could not return. The Matthews family would not give up easily, and she feared the consequences her actions could bring for her and for Tyler. The next morning, Daniel called very early. "Rebecca, I need you and Tyler to come to my office immediately. I discovered something very important." When they arrived at the office, they found Daniel visibly agitated. He had spent the whole night researching and had discovered information that completely changed the picture of the situation. "Rebecca, your mother didn't disappear as you believed." "What do you mean?" "I found records that she was admitted to a psychiatric hospital in 1984, right after signing the property transfer papers." Rebecca felt her legs go weak. "Admitted? Why?" "According to the documents, she was exhibiting bouts of aggression and delusions of persecution. The hospitalization was requested by the Matthews family themselves, who claimed to be concerned about her well-being." "This doesn't make sense," said Tyler. "If they were worried about her, why did they keep the property?" "That is exactly the right question, Tyler, and I think I've found the answer." Daniel showed a yellowed document. "Here is the power of attorney your grandmother supposedly signed, giving Joachim Matthews, Victoria's father, the authority to manage her assets while she recovered." "And so?" "The problem is that this power of attorney was signed on the same day she was hospitalized. It's very strange for a person in a psychotic break to be able to sign such a complex legal document." Rebecca began to understand the magnitude of what had happened to her mother. They set all this up to get her property. "That is exactly what appears to have happened. Your mother was declared mentally incompetent, hospitalized, and lost all rights to her assets." "And where is she now?" Daniel hesitated before answering. "Rebecca, your mother remained hospitalized until the end of her life. She never left the psychiatric hospital." The news hit Rebecca like a punch to the stomach. She had always believed her mother had abandoned the family because she couldn't handle the responsibilities. Now she discovered that Mary Grace had spent the last years of her life locked away in a hospital, far from her daughter, the victim of a cruel scheme. "Mr. Harper, can we prove that all of this was planned?" "I can try, but it will be very difficult. We need to find people who witnessed what really happened at the time." Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now continuing. Daniel suggested they look for the hospital where Mary Grace had been hospitalized. Perhaps there were still old staff members who remembered her, or medical records that could clarify the circumstances of the hospitalization. St. Helens Psychiatric Hospital was a 2-hour drive from the city. Rebecca, Tyler, and Daniel went there on a Tuesday morning. The place was old and somewhat poorly maintained, but still operational. At the reception, they were assisted by a young nurse who directed them to speak with the director. Dr. Maurice Gordon. "You're looking for information about a patient from over 40 years ago?" asked the director, surprised. "That's a very long time. I don't know if we still have records from that period." "Please, doctor, it's very important to us," said Rebecca. The director asked them to wait and went to check the old archives. After almost an hour, he returned with a yellowed folder. "I found the medical record of Mary Grace Thompson Wilson. She was hospitalized here from 1984 until 1998. 1998? Rebecca felt the world spin. She was hospitalized for 14 years. Unfortunately, yes, and according to the records, she never received any visitors. Never. There was a note here saying the family had been advised not to visit her so as not to interfere with the treatment. Daniel examined the medical records. "Doctor, these notes about the patient's mental state, do they indicate what kind of problem she had?" The director read the notes carefully. "This is very strange. According to the records, she did not show symptoms typical of serious mental illnesses. In fact, most of the time she was lucid and oriented. Then why was she hospitalized for so long? I don't know. The records don't make much sense. There are several contradictory notes." The director continued flipping through the medical record. Here's something interesting. Mary Grace wrote several letters during her hospitalization. Letters to her daughter. Letters? Rebecca felt her heart race. What letters? According to the protocol at the time, all patient letters were retained by the hospital administration for psychiatric evaluation. She wrote over 100 letters over the years. And where are these letters? They must be in the archives. I'll have them searched for. Half an hour later, an employee brought a box full of handwritten letters, all addressed to Rebecca Thompson Wilson. With trembling hands, Rebecca opened the first letter. It was dated May 1984. "My dear Rebecca, Mommy is in a strange place, but don't worry. The people here say I'm sick, but I know I'm not. I know who did this to me. They tricked me and brought me here to take our land. But I will get out of here and I will tell everyone the truth. I love you very much, my daughter." Rebecca couldn't hold back her tears. After all these years, she was finally hearing her mother's voice again. "Doctor, were these letters never sent?" "No. The protocol at the time stated that letters from psychiatric patients could only be sent after medical evaluation. Apparently, none of them were approved for sending." Tyler picked up one of the more recent letters from 1997. "Rebecca, my dear daughter, today I complete 13 years in this terrible place. I am already a 60-year-old woman, but I still have hope of one day leaving here and finding you. I don't know if you are well, if you manage to study, if you have children. I think of you every day. I want you to know that your mother never abandoned you. They forced me to sign papers, said that if I didn't sign, you would also be harmed. I did everything to protect you, but I ended up losing everything anyway." Tears streamed down Tyler's face as he read his grandmother's letter. "Grandma, I will get justice for you," he whispered. The hospital director was clearly moved by the situation. "Look, I shouldn't do this, but I will give you a copy of the entire medical record. From what I'm seeing here, your mother was the victim of a great injustice. Doctor, did you work here back then?" "No, I took over as director only 10 years ago. But I know some long-time employees who may have known your mother." The director called a nurse of about 70 years old, Mrs. Margaret, who had worked at the hospital for almost 50 years. "Mrs. Margaret, do you remember a patient named Mary Grace?" The nurse thought for a moment. "Mary Grace? Yes, I do remember. A very polite lady, always well-groomed, very different from most of the patients we had here. What was she like? A normal person. She always said she wasn't mentally ill, that she had been tricked by bad people. At first we thought it was part of her illness, but over time we began to realize she might be telling the truth. Why? Because she never showed any signs of madness. She was one of the most sensible people I ever knew. She would tell me stories about the little daughter she had left behind, about the factory she owned, about people who wanted to take her land." Rebecca approached the nurse. "Do you believe she was telling the truth?" Today, After all these years, I am certain she was. Mary Grace was a lucid woman who was a victim of unscrupulous people. And why did she never leave the hospital? Because every time the doctor evaluated the possibility of discharge, someone from the family who had paid for her hospitalization would appear, saying she still posed a danger to herself and others. What family? I don't remember the name, but they were rich, well-dressed people. They would come here from time to speak with the doctors, but they never visited Mary Grace. Daniel was writing everything down in his notebook. Mrs. Margaret, do you remember any other detail that might be important? I remember Mary Grace always talked about an old car where she had hidden important documents. She said that one day someone would find those documents and discover the truth. Tyler and Rebecca exchanged glances. It couldn't be a coincidence. Did she say where this car was? Asked the boy. She said it was hidden in the woods near the house, that she had put all the important papers there before being brought here. And do you believe those documents really existed? Yes, I do. Mary Grace was a very organized person, always concerned with papers and documents. She said she knew someone wanted to harm her, so she had kept everything in a safe place. The conversation with Mrs. Margaret confirmed everything Tyler and Rebecca already suspected. Mary Grace had been the victim of an elaborate plan to take her property and had spent the last 14 years of her life unjustly locked away in a psychiatric hospital. On the way back home, they could barely speak. The weight of the discovery was devastating. Rebecca had spent her whole life believing her mother had abandoned her, when in fact Mary Grace had fought until the end to protect her daughter. "Mom, now we have proof of everything," said Tyler, breaking the silence. "Yes, my son. But I still don't know if it will be enough to get justice." "It will be. We can't give up now." Daniel, who had been quiet the whole way, finally spoke. "Rebecca, what we discovered today changes everything. We're no longer just talking about misappropriation. We're talking about forced commitment, falsification of medical records, and possibly other serious crimes. What does that mean in practice? It means you have the right not only to the original property, but also to compensation for all the damages caused to your family over these years." Rebecca felt a mix of hope and fear. But the Matthews family won't accept this easily. No, they won't. They will fight with all their might. But now we have solid evidence of what happened. When they arrived in town, it was already night. Rebecca and Tyler went home physically and emotionally exhausted. They had barely entered the house when they heard loud knocks on the door. Outside were two men in suits, the same ones who had accompanied Victoria on the previous visit. "Are you Rebecca Thompson Wilson?" "I am. What do you want?" "We have a summons for you to appear at the Matthews family office tomorrow at 9 in the morning. "A summons for what?" "The family is suing you for defamation and extortion." Tyler felt his blood boil. "Extortion? We didn't ask anyone for money." "We weren't talking to you, kid." Rebecca took the paper from the man's hands. "And if I don't go?" "Then the authorities will be called to fetch you." After the men left, Rebecca immediately called Daniel. "Mr. Harper, they are suing me." "Calm down, Rebecca. It was to be expected. It's a common tactic to intimidate people who are investigating crimes like this. And now we fight back. With the evidence we have, we can file a much more serious lawsuit against them. But do I need to go to this meeting tomorrow?" "You do. But don't go alone. I'll go with you." The next morning, Rebecca dressed in her best dress and went with Daniel and Tyler to the Matthews family office. The place was downtown in an elegant building that contrasted with the simplicity of the rest of the town. They were received in a luxurious room with expensive furniture and paintings on the walls. Victoria was there, accompanied by a formidable-looking lawyer and by Joseph Matthews himself, a 75-year-old man, the family patriarch. "So you're the people trying to tarnish my family's name," said Joseph with a firm voice. "We're not trying to tarnish anything. We just want to discover the truth about what happened to my mother," replied Rebecca. "Your mother was a mentally disturbed person. We did everything we could to help her, but unfortunately she couldn't be saved." Daniel stepped forward. "Mr. Joseph, we have evidence that Mrs. Mary Grace's commitment was forged so you could take possession of her property." The Matthews family attorney slammed his hand on the table. "That is a very serious accusation. Do you have proof of what you're saying? We do. Daniel opened his briefcase and showed copies of the documents found by Tyler, along with the hospital's medical records. Here is evidence that Mrs. Mary Grace's signature was forged on several documents. Furthermore, we have the complete medical file, which proves she was mentally lucid throughout her entire commitment. Joseph Matthews examined the documents with an expression that shifted from arrogance to concern. Where did you get this? At the hospital where the lady was committed for 14 years, Mr. Joseph. 14 years away from her daughter because of a lie you created. The silence in the room was heavy. Victoria looked at her father with an expression of shock and disbelief. Dad, is this true? Joseph didn't answer immediately. He kept examining the documents, clearly trying to find a way to defend himself. Even if these documents were real, it doesn't change the fact that we purchased the property legally. Legally? Daniel laughed with disdain. You forged the commitment of a sane person to steal her land. That is not legal in any way. You can't prove the commitment was forged. Yes, we can. We have testimony from hospital staff confirming that Mrs. Mary Grace was lucid. Furthermore, we have over 100 letters she wrote to her daughter, all illegally withheld by the hospital administration. Tyler, who had been quiet until then, stood up and looked directly at Joseph. You stole my grandmother from me. Because of you, I grew up without knowing her. My mother grew up thinking she had been abandoned, and my grandmother spent 14 years locked in a hospital, away from the family she loved. The boy's words hit Joseph in a way the legal arguments hadn't managed. For the first time, he seemed truly shaken. Son, things were different back then. Different how? Was stealing allowed back then? Victoria rose from her chair, visibly upset. Dad, tell me this isn't true. Tell me our family wasn't built on such a great injustice. Joseph looked at his daughter, then at Rebecca and Tyler, and finally lowered his head. Victoria, when I was young, opportunities were few. Your grandmother had already passed. Your mother worked in the city. You had nothing. I thought I was doing what was best for everyone. Doing what was best? Rebecca felt her anger explode. The best was to steal my mother from me. The best was to lock an innocent person in a psychiatric hospital. I never meant for her to stay there that long. I thought in a few years she'd get out and move on with her life somewhere else. With what money if you had stolen everything from her? Joseph couldn't answer. The room fell silent for several minutes, until Victoria broke the tense atmosphere. Dad, you need to make this right. Victoria, if we do that, we'll lose everything. The company, the house, everything. Then we'll lose it. I can't live knowing our wealth was built on so much suffering. The family's attorney tried to intervene. Victoria, you need to think this through. There are many employees who depend on the company's jobs, and there is a family that was destroyed because of my father's greed. Tyler looked at Victoria with a new perspective. Perhaps she wasn't as bad as he had initially thought. Mrs. Victoria, we don't want to destroy your company. We just want justice for my grandmother. And what do you consider just? She asked. Daniel stepped forward. The restitution of the original property, plus compensation for the damages caused over these years. And how much would that represent in money? Considering the property is worth much more today than it was in the 80s, plus the profits generated over 4 decades, we're talking about several million reais. Joseph put his hands on his head. We don't have all that money available. Then we'll have to discuss other forms of reparation, said Daniel. The meeting ended without a definitive resolution. Both parties agreed to meet again the following week to discuss the terms of a possible agreement. On the way back home, Tyler asked a question that surprised the adults. Mr. Harper, what will happen to the people who work at the company if it closes? Why are you worried about that, Tyler? Because they didn't do anything wrong. They're just trying to support their families just like us. Rebecca looked at her son with pride. My son, you're right. We can't harm innocent people because of other people's greed. So what are we going to do? Daniel thought for a moment. Perhaps we can find a solution that brings you justice without destroying the jobs of hundreds of families. How? You could become partners in the company instead of simply taking possession of it. That way, you'd be entitled to profits and have a say in decisions, but the company would keep operating. The idea made sense to everyone. It was a way to repair the historical injustice without causing even more suffering for innocent people. That night, Rebecca and Tyler talked at length about everything that had happened. "Mom, do you think Grandma would be proud of us?" "I'm sure she would, my son. She always fought for the truth, and that's what we're doing." "And do you forgive her for leaving us?" Rebecca hugged Tyler. "She never left us, my love. She was taken from us. It's very different. And if we manage to resolve all this, will our lives change a lot?" "Yes, Tyler. But the most important thing has already changed. Now we know the truth about our family, about our history." The next day, Daniel called with unexpected news. "Rebecca, I received a call from Victoria Matthews. She wants to meet with you without lawyers, without her father. Just the three of you." "Could it be a trap?" "I don't think so. She seemed genuinely interested in finding a fair solution." "Where does she want to meet?" "At her house. This afternoon." Rebecca hesitated. Going to the home of the family that had destroyed her family seemed surreal. "I don't know, Mr. Harper." "Mom, I think we should go," said Tyler. "You saw how shocked she was yesterday. Maybe she really wants to do the right thing." "All right, but you're coming with us, Mr. Harper." "Of course." The Matthews family home was in an upscale neighborhood of the city. It was an imposing mansion surrounded by well-kept gardens and high walls. When they arrived, they were greeted by Victoria herself, who invited them in. "Thank you for coming. I know it can't be easy to be here." "It really isn't," replied Rebecca. Victoria took them to a cozier room than the office where they had met the previous day. There was coffee and cake on the table. "Please, help yourselves." After everyone was settled, Victoria began to speak. "I spent the whole night thinking about everything I discovered yesterday. About what my father did to your mother. About how our family was built on a lie." "And what is your position now?" asked Daniel. "I want to make things right. I want to do what's right." "Even if that means giving up part of the family wealth?" "Yes. Dirty money doesn't bring happiness. And now that I know the origin of our wealth, I can't sleep in peace anymore." Tyler, who had been observing Victoria closely, decided to speak. "You really didn't know anything about this?" "No, Tyler. I grew up believing my grandfather had built the company through honest work. Discovering the truth was a huge shock. And your father? Will he accept doing what's right?" Victoria sighed. "My father is a man of the past. He grew up in a time when stealing from the poor to get rich was considered clever. It will be hard to convince him. And if he doesn't accept, then I will make the decisions alone. I am the main shareholder of the company now." Daniel leaned back in his chair. "Victoria, what kind of solution do you have in mind?" "I want to propose that Rebecca and Tyler become partners in the company. Not minor partners, but partners with a real right to share in the profits and decisions." "What percentage are you thinking?" 50%. Half the company." Rebecca almost choked on her coffee. "Half?" "Yes. Considering the original property was all your mother's and that our family profited from it for 40 years, I believe 50% is fair." Daniel did some quick calculations in his head. "That would represent millions of dollars a year in profits." "Yes, and it would also give you decision-making power over the direction of the company." Tyler, showing impressive maturity for his age, asked a question that surprised everyone. "And what would we do with all that money?" "What do you mean?" asked Victoria. "It's just that we've always been poor. We don't know what to do with so much money. And there are a lot of people in our community who are in need, just like we were." "What are you suggesting?" "That we use some of the money to help the people in our community, to build a better school, a health clinic, programs for the children." Victoria looked at the boy with admiration. "Tyler, that's a wonderful idea. We could make the company not just a place to make money, but a place that really helps the community." Rebecca smiled at her son, proud of the wisdom he showed. "My son is right. If we are going to have this opportunity, we should use it to do good." "So, do you accept the proposal?" asked Victoria. "We accept," replied Rebecca, "but on one condition." "What?" "We want a memorial made for my mother. Something that tells the true story of what happened so no one forgets." "I completely agree." Daniel, who had been quiet during the negotiation, finally spoke. "Victoria, will your father accept this?" "He'll have to. The company has been in my name for 5 years. He has no legal decision-making power over it. And if he tries to cause trouble, he won't succeed. Now that we know the truth, he knows any attempt to resist will only make things worse for him. The meeting ended with an agreement in principle. The legal details would be settled by the lawyers over the next few weeks, but the essential part was decided. Justice would be done. On the way back home, Tyler asked a question that left Rebecca thoughtful. "Mom, do you think Grandma knew that one day the truth would be discovered?" "Why do you ask that?" "Because she hid the documents in the car in a way that someone would find them one day. And she always told the nurses that the truth would come out." Rebecca thought about her son's words. "You know something, Tyler? I think she did know. She was always a very wise woman." "And what do you think, Mr. Harper?" "I think your grandmother planted the seeds of justice, and you were the instruments to make those seeds bloom." In the following weeks, news of the settlement spread through the town. The community's reaction was mixed. Some people were happy to see justice being done for a family that had always faced hardships. Others were worried about the future of the company, which was the largest employer in the region. Joseph Matthews initially tried to contest the settlement. He hired lawyers from outside the town and threatened to sue his own daughter. But when the details of the case became public, he lost the support of the community and even some of the company's employees. A regional newspaper decided to investigate the case more deeply and discovered that Mary Grace's situation had not been an isolated one. The Matthews family had used similar tactics to acquire at least 4 other properties over the years. "Mr. Harper, what does this mean for our case?" asked Rebecca when she learned of the new discoveries. "It means you were not the only victims, and this further strengthens our legal position." "And the other families?" "Some no longer exist. Others left the region a long time ago, but we are trying to locate them so they can also seek justice." The repercussions of the case reached other towns in the region. Organizations that defended the rights of small rural landowners contacted Daniel offering legal support. "Rebecca, your case is becoming a symbol of the fight against land appropriation," explained Daniel. "This can help many other families who have gone through similar situations. We just wanted justice for my mother. I never imagined it would turn into something so big." Sometimes the pursuit of individual justice ends up transforming into collective justice. While the legal aspects of the settlement were being finalized, Victoria began working on implementing changes in the company. She spoke with all the employees, explaining the situation and assuring that no one would lose their job. "In fact," she said during a meeting with the workers, "the company is going to grow. We will invest more in the local community, create new social programs and job opportunities." The employees' reaction was positive. Many of them had grown up in the same community as Tyler and knew about the difficulties faced by the poorer families in the region. Mr. Anthony, the neighbor who had lent his cell phone to Tyler to photograph the documents, was one of the first to congratulate the family. "Rebecca, your mother was watching you from above. I'm sure she is proud." "Thank you, Mr. Anthony. You helped us so much by lending your phone to Tyler. It was nothing, my dear. What matters is that justice was done." Mrs. Evelyn, the librarian, was also moved by the outcome of the story. "Tyler, you are a very brave boy. If it weren't for your determination, this injustice would never have been righted. Mrs. Evelyn, you were the one who helped us discover the truth. Without your information, we would never have known what really happened." "Sometimes that's exactly what older people are for," she replied with a smile. "To keep the memories until someone comes along to seek the truth." Dear listener, if you are enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot, as we are just starting out, now continuing. 2 months after the initial settlement, the legal documentation was finalized. Rebecca and Tyler officially became owners of 50% of Thompson & Sons Industries, which was renamed Mary Grace Industries in honor of the boy's grandmother. The signing ceremony for the documents was held at the very location where Mary Grace's small canning factory had once operated. Victoria insisted it be this way, as a means of publicly acknowledging the injustice that had been committed. "Today," Victoria said during the ceremony, "we are not just signing a business agreement. We are making historical amends and promising that our company will be an instrument of development for the entire community. Tyler, who was wearing his first suit, bought especially for the occasion, was invited to speak. "I want to thank everyone who helped us discover the truth about my grandmother," said the boy, visibly emotional. "And I want to promise that we will use this opportunity to help other families going through hardships like the ones we went through." The first project implemented by the new administration was the construction of a modern community school with computer labs and a well-equipped library. The school was named Mary Grace School, and Mrs. Evelyn was invited to be its first principal. "Mrs. Evelyn, will you accept?" asked Tyler. "My boy, after 40 years working in a library, nothing would make me happier than helping to educate the children of this community." The second project was the construction of a health clinic equipped with specialist doctors who came from the capital once a week. For the first time in the community's history, people didn't have to travel for hours to receive proper medical care. Rebecca, who now had a stable income for the first time in her life, decided to go back to school. She enrolled in an administration course in a neighboring town, with the goal of better understanding how to manage her share of the company. "Mom, you don't have to work anymore. We have money now," said Tyler. "My son, work isn't just about money. It's about feeling useful, about contributing to something bigger than ourselves." "And what do you want to do?" "I want to coordinate the company's social projects. I want to make sure other families have the opportunities we didn't have." Tyler continued studying at the local school, but now he had access to quality materials, well-trained teachers, and future prospects that once seemed impossible. Despite the financial changes, he remained the same simple and generous boy he always was. "Tyler," said one of his classmates, "you haven't changed at all after getting rich." "It's just that being rich doesn't change who you are inside," the boy replied. "And besides, I don't feel rich. I feel responsible." "Responsible for what?" "For using the opportunities we have now to help those in need." The transformation in the community was gradual, but visible. New houses were built for families living in precarious conditions. A microcredit program was created to help local small business owners. Vocational courses were offered to young people who wanted to learn new skills. Joseph Matthews, who had initially resisted the changes, gradually began to realize that the new company leadership was bringing benefits for everyone. Productivity increased, employee satisfaction improved, and even profits grew. "Victoria," he said to his daughter during a family dinner, "I have to admit you were right." "About what, Father?" "About doing the right thing. The company has never been better." "Father, are you willing to apologize publicly to Rebecca and Tyler?" Joseph was silent for a long moment. "Yes, I am. It's long overdue." The public apology ceremony was organized in the town's central square. Joseph, a proud man who had never publicly admitted to mistakes, walked up to a small makeshift stage where Rebecca and Tyler were waiting for him. "Rebecca, Tyler," he began, his voice choked with emotion. "I made serious mistakes in the past, mistakes that cost your family dearly, mistakes that fill me with deep shame today." The square was packed with townspeople, company employees and representatives from the regional press. "I stole Mary Grace's property through dishonest methods. I had her unjustly committed to a psychiatric hospital, separating her from her young daughter. And I built my family's fortune upon this terrible injustice." Some people in the crowd murmured, others fell into complete silence. "I know an apology cannot undo 40 years of suffering. I know I cannot give back to Rebecca the years she spent without her mother, nor to Tyler the years he spent without knowing his grandmother. But I hope the changes we are implementing now can, in some way, honor the memory of Mary Grace." Rebecca approached the microphone. "Mr. Joseph, I accept your apology, not because what you did can be easily forgiven, but because I believe people can change, and because my mother always taught me that holding on to anger in your heart only hurts us." Tyler also spoke. "Grandma always said in her letters that she didn't want revenge, she wanted justice. And today, finally, justice has been done." The ceremony ended with the unveiling of a memorial honoring Mary Grace. It was a small square with gardens, benches for rest, and a plaque that told her true story. "Mary Grace Thompson Wilson, 1938–1998. Hard-working woman, loving mother, and victim of great injustice. Her courage and determination inspired the historical reparation that transformed our community. May her memory always remind us of the importance of fighting for truth and justice. Months passed, and life in the community had changed completely. The old division between rich and poor still existed, but opportunities were more evenly distributed. Children who once had no prospects for the future now dreamed of becoming doctors, teachers, engineers. Rebecca, who had finished her administration course, was coordinating an ambitious community development program. She worked directly with the most needy families, helping them develop small businesses and gain access to quality education and healthcare. "Mom, are you happy?" asked Tyler during a dinner. "Very happy, my son. For the first time in my life, I feel like I'm doing something truly important." "Do you think Grandma is proud of us?" "I am absolutely certain she is." Tyler, now 13, had become a role model for other children in the community. He organized study groups, helped classmates with financial difficulties, and always spoke about the importance of studying and dreaming big. "Tyler," his teacher said, "you have a natural gift for leadership. Have you ever thought about being a politician when you grow up?" "I have, teacher, but I want to be a different kind of politician. I want to be someone who really works for the people, not just makes promises." "And do you think that's possible?" "I think we can change the world by starting with our own community. If everyone did that, the whole world would change." The boy's wisdom impressed everyone around him. Despite his young age, he had lived through experiences that gave him a unique perspective on justice, social responsibility, and the importance of fighting for the rights of the less fortunate. Victoria, for her part, had become a respected businesswoman, not only in the region but throughout the state. Mary Grace Industries was cited as an example of a socially responsible company, and the community development model they had created was being replicated in other cities. "Victoria," said a journalist during an interview, "how do you define the company's success today?" "We don't measure our success just by profits, though they have grown consistently. We measure it by the impact we make on people's lives, by how many families have left poverty, how many children have gained access to quality education, how many young people got a job for the first time." "And personally, how has this experience changed you?" "It taught me that true wealth isn't in the money you have in the bank, but in the good you can do for others. It taught me that past mistakes can be corrected if we have the courage to face the truth." 1 year after the discovery of the documents in the overgrown car, the transformation of the community was evident. The unemployment rate had dropped drastically, new businesses had opened, and young people who used to migrate to big cities looking for opportunities now chose to stay and contribute to local development. Mrs. Margaret, the nurse who had cared for Mary Grace at the psychiatric hospital, was invited to visit the community and see the changes that had taken place. "Tyler," she said, moved, "your grandmother would be so proud to see what you've accomplished. She always said your family had a special destiny, that one day you would do great things." "Do you really think she knew?" "I'm sure. Mary Grace was a woman with very strong intuition. She knew the injustice wouldn't last forever. And what else did she say about us? She said you would be a special boy, that you would change not only your family's life, but the lives of many people around you. And look," she pointed to the school, the health clinic, the new houses. She was right. During this visit, Mrs. Margaret gave Tyler something she had kept all these years, a small cloth doll that Mary Grace had made for her daughter during her hospitalization. "Your grandmother made this for your mother. She said she would one day be able to deliver it in person, but since that never happened, I want you to have it." Rebecca held the doll with trembling hands, tears streaming down her face. "My mother made this for me." "Yes, she did. She spent hours working on this doll, imagining the day she could play with you again. It was a powerful symbol of a love that had spanned decades, withstood injustice, and finally found its way back home." That night, Rebecca and Tyler sat on the porch of the new house they had built, larger and more comfortable, but still simple and welcoming, to talk about everything that had happened. "Mom, sometimes I wake up and think all of this was a dream." "Me too, son. A year ago, we couldn't even imagine our lives could change so much. And you don't miss how things were before? Rebecca thought about the question. You know, Tyler, I don't miss the financial struggles, the fear of not having food on the table, the sleepless nights worrying about bills, but I miss the simplicity of some moments, when it was just the two of us against the world. But we're still just the two of us. It's just that now we have more people who care about us. That's true, and we have a greater responsibility too. Mom, what do you think will happen from now on? I don't know, my love, but I know that whatever happens, we'll face it together. And we'll always remember where we came from and the people who helped us along the way. Tyler looked at the starry sky. Grandma, thank you for being so brave. Thank you for keeping the documents. Thank you for never giving up the fight, even when everything seemed lost. It was as if, somehow, Mary Grace could hear him. The next day, Tyler did something he had planned for weeks. He returned to the forest where he had found the car, bringing with him a yellow ipe sapling, his grandmother's favorite tree according to the letters she had written in the hospital. At the spot where the car had been burned, he carefully planted the tree, watering it with water he brought from home. Grandma, this tree will grow and become beautiful just like you always dreamed our family would be. And when it's big, every time someone passes by here, they'll remember you. Rebecca, who had accompanied her son, knelt beside the small tree. Mother, forgive us for taking so long to discover the truth. Forgive us for believing you had abandoned us. And thank you for never giving up on us, even in the most difficult moments. They stayed there for a few minutes, in silence, each lost in their own thoughts and memories. As they were heading back home, Tyler stopped along the way. Mom, I have an idea. What idea? We could write a book telling Grandma's story, so other people know it's worth fighting for justice, even when it seems impossible. That's a great idea, son. Let's talk to Attorney Daniel Harper about it. And with Mrs. Evelyn, too, she writes very well. And we could use the money from the book to help other families who have been through similar situations. Tyler smiled. Grandma would like that idea. As they walked back home, they didn't know their story was already inspiring other people in similar situations. In neighboring towns, families who had lost their properties under suspicious circumstances were beginning to question what had happened to them. Daniel was receiving calls from lawyers in other regions, interested in learning how the case had been handled. Human rights organizations were documenting the story as an example of how historical injustices can be remedied. Rebecca, Daniel said during one of their regular meetings, you have become a symbol of hope for many people. We just wanted justice for my mother. And you got it. But in the process, you paved the way for others to seek justice too. And is that good? It's wonderful. It means Mary Grace's suffering was not in vain. It means your courage is making a difference in the lives of many other families. 6 months later, the book, The Woman Who Never Gave Up, The Story of Mary Grace was published. Written in collaboration by Rebecca, Tyler, Mrs. Evelyn, and Daniel, the book told not only the story of the injustice suffered by Mary Grace, but also her family's journey in search of truth and reparation. The launch was held in the community itself, at the school named after Tyler's grandmother. Hundreds of people attended, including representatives from other communities that had faced similar situations. This book, Tyler said during the launch, is not just about my grandmother. It's about all the people who have suffered injustices and never gave up fighting. It's about hope, about courage, and about the power we have when we come together to do what's right. The book's sales exceeded all expectations. The money raised was used to create a legal support fund for low-income families facing land ownership issues. 2 years after the discovery of the documents, Tyler, now 14, was invited to speak at schools in various cities about his experience. Children, he would say during one of these talks, you never know what important discoveries you might make. I was just a boy looking for firewood in the woods, and I ended up uncovering an injustice that had lasted 40 years. But how do we know if something is worth investigating? Asked a child from the audience. When something doesn't make sense, when a story doesn't add up, when you feel in your heart that something is wrong, those are the times to investigate, always with the help of responsible adults, of course. And if we discover an injustice, what do? Never give up. Even if people say you're too young, too poor, or too small to make a difference. My grandmother was a simple woman, and she almost managed to stop the injustice all by herself. Imagine what we can do when we come together." Tyler's words inspired children wherever he went. Many of them began to pay more attention to the stories their grandparents told, to ask questions about their families' pasts, to question situations that seemed strange. At one of these talks, a 10-year-old girl raised her hand. "Tyler, did your grandmother know that you were going to find the documents?" "I don't know if she knew it would be me specifically, but I think she knew that someone would find them. She had faith that the truth always comes out sooner or later." "And do you think she's happy now?" Tyler smiled. "I think she's very happy. Not only because the injustice was corrected, but because we managed to use our new situation to help other people. That was always her greatest quality, caring about others, even when she herself was suffering." That night, Tyler called home to tell Rebecca about the talk. "Mom, today a girl asked me a question that got me thinking." "What question?" "She wanted to know if I wasn't afraid that our luck would run out one day." "And what did you answer?" "I said I don't believe in luck. I believe in hard work, in doing the right thing, and in never giving up on our values, even when we have money." "Very good, my son." "Mom, aren't you also afraid that someday we might lose everything again?" Rebecca thought about the question. "You know, Tyler, I've learned that there are things nobody can take from us. Our memories, our character, the people we love, the good we do for others. Those things are our true wealth. And if we lost all the money, then we'd start all over again. But now we know we are capable of overcoming any difficulty. We know we have true friends, and we know it's worth fighting for our rights. Do you think Grandma would be proud of who we've become?" "I'm absolutely certain, my love." 3 years after the discovery, the community had become an example of sustainable development. Universities sent students to research the economic model that had been implemented. Politicians came to learn about the social programs. Business people sought to learn how to reconcile profit with social responsibility. But for Tyler, now 15, the most important thing was to see the smile on the faces of the people in the community. Children who once went hungry now had 3 meals a day. Young people who had no prospects were now attending university with scholarships offered by the company. Elderly people who had no medical care now received quality attention. "Tyler," said Victoria during a company board meeting, "do you have any suggestions for our next project?" "Yes, I do. I want us to create a program to preserve the stories of the oldest families in the region." "How so?" "Well, talking to people, I discovered that many families have interesting stories, but nobody ever bothered to record them. If we don't do it now, in a few years these memories will be lost forever." "That's a very good idea." "And there's more. I think some of these families may have gone through situations similar to Grandma's. If we record the stories, we might discover other injustices that need to be corrected." Rebecca, who was participating in the meeting as the coordinator of social projects, smiled proudly at her son. "My son, this idea is wonderful, and it shows you've learned the most important lesson your grandmother taught us." "What lesson?" "That our responsibility isn't just to our own family, but to the entire community." The Family History Preservation Project was launched 6 months later. Teams of young people from the community itself, trained by historians from the State University, began visiting the oldest families to record their memories. The result was surprising. Besides fascinating stories about the founding of the community, at least 3 situations similar to Mary Grace's were discovered. Families who had lost property under suspicious circumstances decades ago. "Mr. Harper," said Tyler, "we need to investigate these cases too." "Tyler, this could take years and cost a lot of money." "It doesn't matter. If people have suffered injustice, we have to help." Daniel looked at the young man with admiration. "Are you sure you're only 15? Your maturity is impressive." "Mr. Harper, we learned that when you have the chance to do good, you can't waste that opportunity." "And does your mother agree with this?" "Let's ask her." Rebecca, when consulted, did not hesitate to support her son's proposal. "Daniel, our family was blessed with justice. Now it's our obligation to help other families find the same justice." And so a new phase began in the family's life. Besides managing their own businesses and community projects, they became advocates for other families who had been victims of similar injustices. Over the following years, they managed to resolve 6 more cases of land misappropriation in the region. Hundreds of people benefited, and the historical reparation model they had developed began to be replicated in other parts of the country. Tyler, at 18, was accepted into one of the country's best universities to study law. But before leaving, he made sure to visit once more the place where he had planted the tree in memory of his grandmother. The yellow ipe was now over 10 feet tall and was blooming for the second time. Its golden flowers shone under the afternoon sun, creating an image of beauty and hope in the middle of the forest. "Grandma," said Tyler, touching the tree trunk, "I'm going to study to become a lawyer like Mr. Harper. I want to help other families like ours. I want to make sure other people don't go through what you went through. And when I graduate," he continued, "I'll come back here. I'll come back to our community to continue the work we started, because it was here that I learned life's most important values." Rebecca, who had accompanied her son, approached the tree. "Mum, your grandson is becoming a good man, a man who will make a difference in the world, just as you did, in your own way, in your time." They stayed there for a few minutes, enjoying the peace of the forest and reflecting on the entire journey they had traveled. As they were heading back home, Tyler asked one final question. "Mum, if you could speak to Grandma one last time, what would you say?" Rebecca thought about the answer. "I would say, thank you, Mom. Thank you for never giving up on us. Thank you for keeping the documents. Thank you for teaching us through your example that it's worth fighting for justice even when everything seems lost. And I," said Tyler, "would say, thank you for showing me that one person, no matter how simple, can change the world. That courage isn't about size or money, but about doing what's right." They walked the rest of the way in silence, each lost in their own thoughts, but united by love and gratitude for a woman who, even in adversity, had never lost hope. 5 years later, Tyler graduated from law school with honors. His thesis was on historical reparation of land injustices, a case study based on his own family's history. During the graduation ceremony, he was chosen to speak on behalf of his class. "Fellow graduates," he said from the podium, "you know I come from a simple family, from a small community in the countryside. When I was a child, I never imagined I would be here today. But I learned that the law is not just a profession. It is a tool for social transformation. It is a way to give voice to the voiceless, to protect the vulnerable, to ensure that justice prevails over injustice. Today, as we receive our diplomas, we take on an enormous responsibility. The responsibility to use our knowledge not only to build our own careers, but to build a fairer society for all." The speech was met with great applause, and Tyler received several job offers from prestigious firms in the capital. But his decision was already made. "Mr. Harper," he said the day after graduation, "I would like to work with you. Tyler, you have much better offers, firms that can pay you 10 times more than I can. Mr. Harper, I already have money. What I want is to make a difference in people's lives. And I learned from you that that is sometimes more important than any salary. Then welcome to the team." Back in his community, Tyler found a transformed reality. The small town had grown in a planned and sustainable way. New neighborhoods had been built, always respecting the environment. The company continued to prosper, generating quality jobs for hundreds of families. The Mary Grace School had become a state reference in education. The health clinic had been expanded into a full hospital. Culture and sports programs offered opportunities for young people of all ages. "Mother," said Tyler during the welcome dinner, "you achieved more than we ever imagined when all this began." "We achieved it, my son, all of us together. And now we continue. Because the work is never done. There are always more people to help, more injustices to correct, more dreams to fulfill." Victoria, who had become not only a business partner but a true friend of the family, was also present at the dinner. "Tyler, may I make a proposal to you?" "Of course. How about we create a legal institute connected to the company? A place where you and other lawyers can work exclusively on social justice cases?" That's a fantastic idea. And we can offer free services for low-income families, legal education courses for the community, and programs to prevent land conflicts. Tyler smiled. Grandma would have loved this idea. The Mary Grace Legal Institute was inaugurated 1 year later, in a ceremony attended by state authorities and representatives of human rights organizations from across the country. This institute, said Tyler during the inauguration, is not just a law firm. It is a symbol that justice can and should be within everyone's reach, regardless of their social or economic condition. My grandmother, Mary Grace, spent the last years of her life fighting for justice. Today, through this institute, we ensure that her fight continues and that other families do not have to go through what ours did. In the years that followed, the institute became a national reference in defending the rights of rural communities. Tyler led cases that resulted in reparations for historical injustices in dozens of communities, benefiting thousands of families. His reputation as a lawyer grew rapidly, but he never lost sight of his core values. He continued living in the same community where he had grown up, remaining the same simple and generous person he had always been. At 25, he was invited to give a lecture at the very university where he had studied. The theme was Social Advocacy, Transforming Lives Through Law. "Students," he said to a packed auditorium, "when I was 12 years old, I stumbled upon a box of documents that completely changed my life and the life of my family. But the real discovery wasn't the papers I found. The real discovery was realizing that each of us has the power to make a difference in the world, regardless of our background or circumstances. You, who are preparing to become lawyers, have a unique opportunity. You can choose to use your knowledge only to enrich yourselves, or you can choose to use your knowledge to transform lives. I chose the second option, and I can assure you I've never regretted it. Because at the end of our lives we won't be remembered for the money we accumulated, but for the good we did for others." After the lecture, a young student approached him. "Tyler, I come from a poor family, just like you. Sometimes I'm afraid I won't be able to graduate, that I won't have opportunities. How did you overcome those difficulties?" Tyler smiled. "I never completely overcame them. Even today, sometimes I wake up thinking it was all a dream. But I learned that fear is part of the journey. The important thing is not to let it paralyze us. And what else can I do? Never forget where you came from. Never forget the people who helped you along the way. And when you manage to graduate and become successful, remember to reach out to those who are just starting out now." "Like you're doing with me?" "Exactly." That night, Tyler called Rebecca to tell her about the conversation with the student. "Mom, today I talked to a girl who reminded me so much of myself as a child." "And what did you tell her?" "The same things you've always told me. That it doesn't matter where we come from, it matters where we're going. That everyone deserves opportunities. That it's worth fighting for our dreams." "My son, you are becoming exactly the man your grandmother dreamed you would be." "You think so?" "I'm sure. She always said in her letters that you would be special, that you would do great things. And look where you are now. Mom, I wouldn't have gotten anywhere without you, without your love, your strength, your determination. We got here together, Tyler, and we'll continue together." By 30, Tyler had become one of the national references in social advocacy. He had founded a network of legal institutes in 15 states, all offering free services to underprivileged communities. But his greatest achievement remained the transformation of the very community where he had grown up. The place that was once a small, poor village was now a prosperous and sustainable town, an example of community development for the entire country. On the morning of his 30th birthday, Tyler decided to make a special visit. He returned to the forest where it all began, to the spot where he had planted the yellow ipay tree in memory of his grandmother. The tree was now majestic, over 50 feet tall. Its roots had spread throughout the area, and other plants had grown around it, creating a small grove. "Grandma," he said, touching the tree trunk, "today I turn 30. And I want to tell you everything that has happened since the last time I was here." He spent nearly an hour talking to the tree, recounting the cases he had won, the families he had helped, the projects he had developed. You know, Grandma, sometimes people call me a hero, but I know the real hero of this story was you. Your courage, your determination, your refusal to give up. That's what made everything possible. And I want to make a promise to you. As long as I live, I will keep fighting for justice. I will keep defending the weak, protecting the vulnerable, and making sure others don't go through what our family went through. Because that's what you taught us, that it's worth fighting for what's right even when it seems impossible. That one person can make a difference in the world, no matter how small or simple they may be. As he was preparing to leave, Tyler heard footsteps behind him. It was Rebecca, now 55, still beautiful and elegant, but with her hair beginning to turn grey. "I knew I'd find you here," she said, approaching. "How did you know?" "Because I came here too on my 50th birthday, and at graduation, and whenever I need to make important decisions." "And what do you come here to do?" "Talk to my mother, ask for advice, give thanks for the blessings we've received." They sat under the tree, enjoying the shade and the silence of the forest. "Tyler, I want you to know that I am the proudest mother in the world." "Mum, let me speak. When you were little, I dreamed that you would have a better life than mine, that you would have opportunities I never had. But I never imagined you would become such a special person, so generous, so committed to the good of others. I learned from you, Mum. No, my son, you learned from your grandmother. Through her letters, through her story, through her example. You inherited from her that determination to do what's right no matter the cost. And didn't you inherit anything from Grandma?" Rebecca laughed. "I did. The stubbornness, the refusal to accept injustice, and the unconditional love for family." They stayed there for a few more hours talking about the past, the present, and the future. When the sun began to set, they got up to return home. "Mom, have you ever thought about writing another book?" "About what?" "About everything that happened afterward, about how our community changed, about the projects we developed, about the other families we helped." "That's a good idea, but this time I want you to be my co-author." "Me?" "You have much more experience than I do now, and your perspective would be very important to complete the story. What should we call the book? How about The Seed in the Tree? How one injustice turned into hope?" Tyler smiled. Grandma would have loved that title. And so, mother and son began a new project together, recording not only the conclusion of Mary Grace's story, but the beginning of a new era for their family and their community. The second book was published 3 years later and became a national bestseller. Once again, all proceeds were directed to social projects, this time focused on legal education for underprivileged communities. Tyler, at 33, had become one of the most respected lawyers in the country. He received invitations for international lectures, offers to work for international organizations, proposals to run for political office, but his answer was always the same. His place was there, in his community, continuing the work he had started when he found that box of documents in a car covered in weeds. In an interview for a national magazine, the journalist asked, "Tyler, don't you have a desire to expand your work, to take on international cases, for example?" "I do, and in a way I already do that. The Institute has partnerships with organizations from various countries. We receive students and lawyers from other places to learn our model, and this allows us to influence change on a global scale." "But don't you miss a more cosmopolitan life?" "No. I learned that we don't need to leave our place to change the world. We can change the world from right where we are." "And what is your greatest professional satisfaction?" Tyler thought about the answer. "When I receive letters from children in other communities, telling me they were inspired by our story to study, to dream big, to fight for their rights. That is priceless." "And personally?" "Personally, my greatest satisfaction is knowing that my grandmother has not been forgotten, that her struggle was not in vain, that she continues to inspire people decades after her passing." That night, Tyler wrote in his personal diary, "Today marks 21 years since I found Grandma's documents. 21 years since our lives changed completely. And I can say with absolute certainty that every moment of the struggle was worth it. Not just for the justice we achieved, not just for the transformation of our community, but for the lesson we learned, that we should never give up fighting for what is right, no matter how impossible it seems. Grandma, wherever you are, know that your granddaughter and your great-grandson have never forgotten your teachings, and they never will. The next day, as he had done every morning for over 2 decades, Tyler went to the Mary Grace School to talk with the children. It was a tradition that had started when he was still a teenager and that he maintained to this day. "Children," he said to a class of 10-year-old students, "do you know why this school has this name?" "Because it was your grandmother's name," shouted a boy in the front row. "That's right. And do you know why we chose to honor her?" "Because she was very brave," answered a girl. "Exactly. Mary Grace was a simple person, just like your parents, but she never gave up fighting for what was right. And because of her courage, today you have this beautiful school, with excellent teachers and all the opportunities you deserve." "Uncle Tyler," asked another boy, "can we also do important things when we grow up?" "Yes, you can, and you don't need to wait to grow up. You can start doing important things right now." "How?" "By studying diligently, helping your classmates, respecting your teachers, taking care of the school, being kind to everyone. These may seem like small things, but they are very important." "And when we grow up?" "Then you'll be able to choose professions that help other people. You can be doctors, teachers, lawyers, engineers, whatever you want. The important thing is to always remember to use your talents to do good." After the conversation with the children, Tyler went to visit Rebecca, who now coordinated an educational foundation that offered scholarships to low-income youth. "Mom, today the children asked me if they can also do important things." "And what did you answer?" "That they can start right now, that they don't need to wait to grow up." "That's right. And do you know what makes me happiest?" "What?" "Seeing that you still make time to talk with the children. Even being so busy, you never forgot where you came from. I learned from you that true success is measured by our ability to help others, especially children. Your grandmother would be very proud." That afternoon, Tyler received an unexpected phone call. It was from a young lawyer from a distant city who had read his books and wanted to ask for advice about a case similar to the one he had faced. "Mr. Tyler, I found a situation very similar to your family's. An entire community lost its land decades ago under suspicious circumstances. Tell me more details." The young attorney explained the case. A company had acquired several properties from simple families through contracts that seemed irregular. The families had been forced to leave the area, and many of them had lost touch over the years. "Attorney, the case is very complex. It involves dozens of families and millions of dollars. I don't know if I have the competence to handle something so big." "How old are you?" asked Tyler. 26, sir. "You know, when I started investigating my family's case, I was 12. I knew nothing about laws, about rights, about how the system worked. But I had one thing, determination to uncover the truth." "But you had Attorney Daniel's help." "I did. And you will have help too. Our network of institutes is at your disposal." "How so?" "We'll form a team to work on your case. I'll send experienced attorneys to help you. We'll provide financial resources for the investigations, and we'll give you all the support you need." "Attorney, I don't have money to pay for this help." "Who said anything about payment? Our work is exactly this, to help cases like yours." "Why would you do that?" Tyler smiled, remembering a similar conversation he had with Daniel years ago. "Because that's how I learned the world works. People help people. And when you succeed in your case, you'll also help other young attorneys who need it." 3 weeks later, Tyler was on a plane heading to the city where the young attorney lived. He had decided to personally oversee the case because he knew how important it was to have guidance and support in the early stages of the investigation. During the flight, he thought about everything that had changed in his life since that day in the forest. From a poor boy looking for firewood, he had become a respected attorney, a successful businessman, and most importantly, someone who had the opportunity to make a difference in the lives of many people. But the essence remained the same. He still felt the same indignation in the face of injustice, the same determination to fight for what was right, the same willingness to help those in need. When the plane landed, he was greeted by the young attorney and by several families who had been victims of the fraudulent appropriation. They were simple people, rural workers who had lost everything and now lived in precarious conditions on the outskirts of the city. "Attorney Tyler," said an elderly lady, "do you really think there is still hope for us?" "Mrs. Mary, when I was 12, my family didn't even have money to buy cooking gas. We thought there would never be a solution to our problems, but we discovered there is always hope when we are willing to fight for what is right. But you were young. We are already old. We've lost so many years. You are never too old to seek justice, and your children, your grandchildren, deserve to know the truth about what happened to your family." In the following days, Tyler worked intensely on the case. He analyzed documents, interviewed witnesses, guided the young attorney on investigation strategies. The case was even more complex than his own family's. It involved more than 50 families who had lost their lands over 2 decades. The responsible company had used increasingly sophisticated tactics to appropriate the properties. "Attorney Tyler," said the young attorney, "this is much bigger than we imagined. How are we going to prove all this?" "The same way we proved it in my case. Step by step, document by document, witness by witness. It may take years, but we will succeed." "Are you sure?" "Absolutely, because we are on the side of justice, and justice always prevails, even if it takes time to arrive." Back in his city, Tyler told Rebecca about the new case he had taken on. "Mum, I found a situation very similar to ours. Dozens of families who were deceived and lost their land." "And are you going to help?" "I am. I've already formed a team to work on the case." "My son, don't you think you're overloading yourself? You already have so many projects, so many responsibilities." "Mum, do you remember what Grandma always said in her letters?" "What?" "That as long as there is injustice in the world, we cannot rest completely." Rebecca smiled. "Your grandmother would be very proud to know you inherited that determination from her. And you, are you proud?" "I am proud every day, my son." 2 years later, the case of the 50 families was successfully resolved. The company was forced to pay millions in compensation and return several properties. Hundreds of people benefited. The young lawyer, following Tyler's example, decided to open a legal institute in his own city to continue helping families in need. "Mr. Tyler," he said during the case resolution ceremony, "how can I thank you for everything you've done for us? By doing for others what we did for you, helping other families in need, never forgetting where you came from, and always extending a hand to those who are just starting." "I will do that, I promise." And so the network of justice that had begun with Tyler's discovery continued to expand, touching lives across the country. End of story. Now tell us what you thought of this touching story of Tyler and his family. Do you believe a child's determination can truly change the destiny of an entire community? If this story touched your heart, leave your like and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss other inspiring narratives like this one. Your opinion is very important to us.